Hi folks, welcome to your MWIS Winter Planner this week, brought to you in association with Fort William Mountain Festival. Through this video we'll have a look at the longer range patterns and some of the technical details in the shorter range as well. At the moment high pressure is dominating still, but rather windy conditions will be common onwards into the week ahead. Largely dry through until midweek, then some weather fronts will start to push back in from the Atlantic. Just to set the scene for the days ahead, at the moment we have a large area of high pressure that's centred over southern Britain and across continental Europe as well, with the prevailing airflow around that coming in as a south to southwesterly as we go through this weekend and into next week, so no surprises that things are relatively mild. Weather fronts at the moment are being steered around the high to the northwest of Scotland, and it's the area of low pressure over the Atlantic that we're then watching eventually for some changes developing as we head onwards towards midweek. There will be some uncertainty how soon those fronts do begin to push their way inwards though, but look at the isobars, they're fairly close together. It does look as though we'll see some fairly windy conditions onwards into the new week. Look at these charts to show the general pressure trends in week by week steps, and where you see the pinker colours it suggests we have higher than average pressure, and the green and blue colours indicating lower than average pressure. And for this full week ahead then it's the high that is dominating, with even fairly high pressure likely later on in this upcoming week, so still mostly small amounts of precipitation in the general forecast. Looking further ahead at the patterns, and things do become more uncertain naturally as we go forwards, but the indications suggest that we have a bit of a shift of the position of that high, taking it a bit more to the west of Britain and Ireland, and lower pressure moves over Scandinavia, just allows maybe some chillier air to topple around the high from the northwest at times, but we're still broadly influenced by the high, so still looking at relatively lower than average precipitation amounts. As we look toward the start of March, the signal is relatively weak, but most indications are looking as though high pressure will stay somewhere towards the northwest of us, with lower pressure further to the south. So if anything, we're into quite a blocked weather regime, one that sees fairly dry conditions still quite common. The temperatures will be uncertain at this stage. It will really depend on the source of the air that is coming towards us. Now, around this high, the prevailing wind flow could well become more of an easterly, and if that easterly has its source around the Baltic, then it could become chillier. If it comes in more from Central Europe, it would stay more on the milder side. There's no real distinct trends in the models at this stage, just exactly which way that temperature will trend. Now on these charts we show you the freezing level situation, and in the short term it's actually quite a technical and complicated situation where we have the genuine freezing level well above the mountains, twice the height of Ben Nevis or thereabouts, and you can maybe just get the suggestion with the 3,000 metre contour shown on this particular chart that that's where the genuine freezing level is. But some of the air that's being drawn around on the southwesterly wind is just cooling off to the point where it's near to freezing point on some of our western mountains. May even be that you're close to freezing point across western Scotland, above 700 or 800 metres, with the temperature then not really falling very much with increasing height, and indeed it may well rise slightly as inversion conditions exist on higher mountains. That situation will be around for a few days, so expect generally the temperature to be just above freezing point, and in some places could be up to 5 degrees Celsius or more over some of the more leeward mountains toward the north and the northeast. Touch of frost possible in some sheltered inland glens and valleys overnight. Higher terrain and surfaces across the tops of the highlands may well stay at least partly frozen then, with some patchy lying snow, and in some places over the Cairngorms still a fair coverage of lying snow, so do be prepared for that over the mountain tops. Things start to change really by midweek onwards. We get a more distinct freezing level coming in as fronts move in from the Atlantic, and you can see there is some suggestion of a drop down below 1,000 metres, even towards 800 metres across the highlands around Wednesday night into Thursday. That may be a fairly temporary drop of freezing level, because at the end of the week things are looking as though it's a milder southwesterly airflow that returns once again into Friday and possibly Saturday. There's an indication into next weekend that we may see a push of west by northwesterly air try and come in, so a possible drop of freezing level through next weekend, but that is quite uncertain. On balance, then, it's a generally mild story, and with not much precipitation around, this chart, which is the snow depth situation, is not going to show a great deal in the next few days, I'm afraid. The bit of patchy lying snow, as mentioned, that will be around over the tops of the highlands, but you just roll this story very quickly on through the week ahead, and nothing really accumulating at all, according to the model. Maybe just a bit of a snow shower, giving a bit of a dusting around Thursday if that chillier air comes in for a time. As it's milder again by Friday, most likely, then any snow that falls will soon melt again. And it's just the consolidated stuff that's there at the moment that is as good as you're going to find at the moment across the mountains, mostly in Scotland. Having a look at the synoptic charts then for the days ahead, and we see high pressure in charge, really very little if any rainfall at all, a few bits of drizzle over some western hills just being dragged in on that southwesterly wind. It's a rather humid atmosphere that's coming in, so a lot of low cloud will shroud the mountains to fairly low levels around most western coasts. The cloud lifting and breaking the further inland and eastwards that you go, with best of any breaks towards higher slopes further around the Cairngorms or maybe the eastern side of the Pennines. A windy day overall, it must be said, very gusty across the mountains, the strongest speeds, gale force, especially over northern tops in Scotland. A similar situation onwards into Sunday. We've still got high pressure nearby, strongest of the winds towards northern regions once more, and very gusty conditions, not always just on the highest tops, some of those gusts through some of the passes and down into some of the corries as well. An inversion situation increasingly developing as the high just begins to build in and push a bit further northwards. So some higher tops in Scotland, especially in the east, may well get just above some of the cloud banks, and for England and Wales, a greater chance of being above the top of any fog or low cloud. The western mountains of Scotland again could just see the odd patch of drizzle, but overall it's a largely dry story. The wind is turning further to the south on Monday and still stays quite gusty across more western mountains, and some gusty conditions around the northern corries in the Cairngorms as well. Still broadly dry at some areas of fog and low cloud, but most or all of the higher mountains by this stage above the inversion, so you'll be in some sunshine and clear air, but some rather hazy, misty, murky conditions could be around lower down. Tuesday doesn't see a great deal of change, still a south to southeasterly wind that will remain quite gusty in places again around some northern corries, for example, and once more we'll see some fog banks at some lower elevations. Most of the mountain tops should be in the clear above this. A few fragments and patches may drift upslope somewhere just around western coast though, but for most places it's dry, there's some sunshine to be found, and temperatures are broadly above freezing point. By Wednesday, some changes developing as a front begins to move in. Thicker cloud generally, and some rain, some drizzle, maybe something a bit heavier moving in to western Scotland. And as temperatures just fall, some of that may turn to sleet or snow eventually as we just get some chillier air behind that cold front. Still quite a gusty, blustery day with wind speeds maybe gusting up to gale force around some of the higher tops. Looking at those general trends then for the end of the week, and bearing in mind there is lower confidence of the forecast modelling by this stage, but the general view is that we're looking to the Atlantic for some weather systems coming in. High pressure is toward the south, low pressure is up towards Iceland. We'll see some milder air come back in most likely around Friday. The risk of some heavier rain for a time, becoming then drizzly, but a broadly windy story with southwesterly winds prevailing. Could be gales or severe gales by the end of the week across the Scottish mountains for a time at least, and then with some uncertainty of the timing, a cold front may just come through into the weekend and lower those temperatures for a while. The general message really is looking still a rather windy one, especially across Scottish mountains, with those west or southwesterlies likely to prevail. High pressure centred away toward the southwest of Britain. You can keep up to date with all the very latest information for your local area, including the West Highlands, every day on our website. That is your MWIS Winter Planner, brought to you in association with Fort William Mountain Festival. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.